Hi, I'm Ido, co-founder and CEO of Arugga AI Farming. We're an Israel-based startup developing autonomous ground robots to treat and monitor individual plants in greenhouses. If you're wondering, Arugga means flower bed in Hebrew. After working for 14 years in the medical device industry, developing technology for breast cancer surgery, I was ready to move on. I was thinking about all kinds of ideas, but one idea stuck. I certainly recall a moment driving in my car thinking about pollination issues when first thoughts about robotic pollination came up. So I started investigating. There's the issue of honeybees dying out called colony collapse disorder, but there are also issues with bumblebee pollination in tomato greenhouses. Early on, I started talking to my friend Eitan, who was working back then in solar energy, and we started investigating the market potential. He's with us today, quarantined on my computer.
Thank you for the introduction, Ido, and hi everyone. It's a shame we can't all be meeting physically under the Australian sun, but glad to be virtually with you today. Prior to founding Arugga with Ido, I spent 10 years working in solar energy, witnessing the beginning of an exciting transition from fossil fuels to clean technologies. While the challenges were different in agriculture, I was fascinated by the massive challenges faced by growers around the world, mainly with regards to the unavailability of labor, which was challenging the premises of their activities and livelihood. Ido and I eventually traveled to a tomato growers conference in Mexico, where we met growers from around the world. It became very clear that beyond pollination, there were other challenges where greenhouse farmers needed help. The ability to detect pests and diseases at an early stage, the ability to improve yield forecasting, and the need to make pruning and flower thinning more efficient. And so it became clear there was a real need for a robotic solution that could perform part or all of these tasks. And as a starter, it made sense to us to focus on the tomato industry, which on its own represents a $100 billion market.
Pollination of tomato and other greenhouse vegetables is typically performed using commercially produced bumblebee hives. Not only is the cost high, but bees spread viruses. They are sensitive to environmental conditions and pesticides, and commercial hives are banned or otherwise unavailable in several countries, like Australia, where pollination must be performed manually. Let me introduce you to Will, who can tell you some more about challenges of pollination in Australia.
Hi, my name's Will Hendricks. I'm one of the growers here at Costa Tomatoes out in Guyra. Pollination in Australia is a really labour-intensive activity, and unfortunately it's not always that efficient. So in this greenhouse alone we have 180,000 tomato plants that need to be individually hand-pollinated 3 times a week. We can't rely on wind pollination either because of the walls and the way that the infrastructure is designed. So yeah, we rely on wand pollination. This is what we call a pollinating wand. It rotates and jiggles its end. We apply a bit of pressure on the stem of the plant, and that'll sort of wiggle the plant enough to make the pollen drop. In agriculture, we're increasingly relying on new technology. We're trying to feed a growing population. We can always improve accuracy and efficiency. We have to work within a budget as well. We have to be profitable, and we want to remain as competitive as possible in a very, very competitive market.
More recently, and while pretty much in lockdown, we managed to ship 2 robots to Australia and remotely start a trial at Costa Group's Guyra greenhouse. What you see is our first pollination robot on site at Costa. It drives autonomously down the row, detecting flowers that are ready for pollination. And once they're detected, it applies a calibrated air pulse to vibrate them, replicating buzz pollination. You can see the cameras and air nozzles, which can simultaneously treat tomato plants on both sides of the row. We identify and pollinate close to 100% of flowers. Based on a number of tests carried so far, we've shown yields as good as and up to 5% higher than the bees. In Australia, where pollination is done manually, we expect to reach similar, if not higher, yields. Our long-term plan is to leverage the presence of our robots in greenhouses and add additional modules such as non-contact pruning, yield prediction, and pest and disease detection.